All right, so today we'll be picking up from where we left off in our last class, which was question 2 of the comprehension. I do believe we have completed questions A and B. So let's move on to question C. What two impression, right? And you can see that the two is given in bold, and so 2 marks or 1 mark for each of the responses. And you want to try and highlight each of these individually. Right now, do not write one and two in your line. Not with bullet points. Write them out as sentences. Uh, write individual sentences so that the examiner knows that these are two individual parts. Right? We just want to play it safe. So, right, what two impressions does the writer want to convey to the reader in this sentence? Splashes of water erupted in all directions, and then we slumped forward, went under, and pulled ourselves through the swirling, wild whale of bubbles. Right, so now, if they're asking for two, there are most likely at least three. This is variant 11 of October 2024, right? So it's the latest paper. Okay, so right, if you want to take a look at the text for any hints or context, right? This is given in line 48. So line 48. So right, actually line 50. So for some reason they got the line wrong. Oh, sorry, I'm reading it wrong. Line 40 is the previous one. My bad. So 50 to 52. There you have it. Right? So that's for context and two impressions, right? So what is by the word impression, right, means what is the writer trying to tell you about that particular situation or that particular scene or that particular action or whatever it is that's happening in those lines, right? What can you picture in your mind that's happening? Right? Obviously, what's written is happening, but what else can you picture? Like you can create a scene in your mind and you can think, okay, fine, what's going on over there? So I think your screen is stopped. Pause. Just get back to it. Yeah, sorry. A moment of chaos. Okay, so that's 1 point. We need two. Right, for this one, just to help you along, right? So splashes of water erupted in all directions. That's how you got the moment of chaos, right? Now focus on anything that gives you a hint of how things are happening. For example, we slumped forward, maybe that will give you a hint. Slumped forward and went under, right? Pulled ourselves through. So what does that tell you? Okay, and then the swirling green quiet whale of bubbles, and maybe over here, right? Quiet is hinting at something. So you want any two, right? You already have one, which is correct response. I'll let you know. Right? Need another one. Anything? Like, don't don't think that you have to get it right. Right? Don't think that you have to get it right. There must be something in going on in your mind, right? So whatever it is, just let me know. Worst case scenario, it will be incorrect, right? And there's nothing to lose from that because we're practicing. Okay. Now, what I can gather, right, is the chaos part over here, obviously, which you did get. And one thing I can get over here is it says quiet, right? And so they went under. Going under in this context means that they went into the water, right? And so it says quiet. So with all the chaos around, right? It was underwater, it was very quiet, it was very peaceful maybe. Okay, so that's one thing we could say. Also, right, it says swirling green quiet whale of bubbles. So maybe like what the scene that they saw under the water was beautiful, right? So you could mention maybe something about beauty. Uh, as for the other possible responses, what are suggested, right, is maybe feeling of heaviness or like for falling heavily into the water, right? So slumped forward and pulled ourselves. Yes, so those are other possibilities that are suggested. So you need to take a look at how the words are used, and then you need to try and guess, like, okay, fine, what is this hinting towards? Okay, there's a veil of bubble. Okay, maybe that's good to look at. Maybe it's beautiful, right? It's quiet, so maybe it's silent, it's peaceful, right? Given the context of the chaos. All right, so good attempt. Moving on to the next question, right? Again, what few marks? So they've given the sentence from the next paragraph. We're here only once, it called, disappearing recklessly into the squirming mass of swimmers. What effect does the writer suggest about the swimmers by using the phrase squirming mass to describe it, right? So basically, right, because it's worth 2 marks, we're giving you this line for context, right? And also there in the text as well. So if they've highlighted two keywords, right, what does the writer want to suggest by using this phrase? So what you want to focus on is on squirming and the mass, obviously, right? The first 2 marks. So 1 mark for explaining each of these. And then, of course, like you need to know what these words mean, or at least try and figure it out from the context, right? What does squirming mean? What does mass mean? Right? And then once you figure that out, once you know what these words mean, then again, just like the previous question, like just like the whole of question 2, you try and figure out, okay, fine. So what does that scene look like? Okay. And you picture it in your head and you try to, maybe picture yourself in that situation. Yeah, okay, fine. So this is what the writer is telling me that that scene was like, what was happening at that moment. So go ahead, right? Let me know what do you think the response should be. Okay. So that I believe is for squirming that we're suggesting, moving everywhere, moving constantly. What about mass? Right, good. Good. So both of your responses, right? For squirming, you can say that, or you could put this in a sentence, right? So instead of going like, there was like the people were moving constantly, there were a lot of people, you could phrase that into a proper sentence, and you could write out that there were a lot of people, there were a lot of swimmers, and they were moving constantly. So there was constant movement. They were moving constantly, or they were moving everywhere. Now coming to question E, which is the final question of the comprehension. Uh, what we have here, right? They've given you these lines, right? So we don't really need to go to the text for context. We have enough of it. And what they're asking you is identify one example of how the writer uses language effectively to convey Matt's feelings in this extract. Okay, so there can be multiple. There can be multiple feelings, right? Maybe 3 or 4 at least, and you're expected to identify only one. Okay, explain the impression again, the impression the writer wants to create in this example that you identify. So it's for 3 marks. 1 mark is for the example, right? So that example you can pick out directly from the text and write it as it is. And then 2 marks for discrimination, right? So just like the previous questions, what is the writer trying to tell you about how Matt is feeling? It's a bit more focused, right? It's not just about the scene, it's about what he's feeling, what's going through his mind, right? At that moment, this character. And so you can read this part of the text. For the next half hour, slow waves rocked us as we rose and we sang a contented chord. In case you're disconnected, I will wait, right? And you can contact me via WhatsApp or something. I'll wait still, right? Because this is scheduled time for a class. So if you can, if in case you try to reconnect and I'm not there, you can just put in a message that you're available again, and then maybe I'll like, restart the class if necessary, right? If I can do it. Okay. So for the next half hour, slow waves rocked us as we rose and we sang, a contented chord of swimmers. The seabed disappeared quickly, but the sun still stretched its arrows deep down on the water, catching umbrellas of clear jellyfish rising from the mud, glowing hypnotically under faint shoals of shimmering fish. Caleb and I timed the strokes evenly as we cut a path through the crisscrossing waves of other swimmers. Finally, I let my feet trail, basking in the warmth washing over me, until we floated onto the glassy waters, shielded by the harbor wall and around the exit ramp, right? So what from here? Like pick any one right now. You- Again, this is like implicit, right? The feeling is not given, but you can pick it out. For example, the seabed disappeared quickly. It's just an example, right? And so does this tell you something about how he's feeling at that moment, right? Or the sun still stretched its arrows deep underwater, right? So does this tell you something about how he's feeling? So pick any one that you feel you can explain easily, right? And then try your attempt. Okay, so you can calm but scale them anyway, right? So scale them and I timed our strokes evenly as a cut apart. That is the example you've chosen. The writer shows the impression of confidence and they are focused and swimming together in a dream. Okay. Now, one thing, right? When you are writing down your answer, do not repeat the question as part of your answer, right? The question, explain what impression the writer creates, and you're starting the answer with the writer is creating the impression that. What you're doing is, you're just, it's unnecessary, right? You're wasting effort and time, however many seconds that would take, right? You're also wasting your lines, even though, right, if you write more than the given lines, the examiner will still check it. And if the answer is correct, then you will get your marks. But then, right, we don't want to, I mean, you want to try and stay within the lines that they've given. Okay. So try not to repeat the question in your answer. Okay. So what are the suggested responses? Well, okay, so the one that you highlighted is correct. Right? So let me just, right, so that's the one you highlighted, and that works. And the explanation is also correct, so it shows confidence, right, and focus. Now, let's like take a look at all the others that we could have possibly. The slow waves rocked us as we rose. All right, so as I was saying, right, uh, other possible parts of the text that could be taken from this question are slow waves rocked us as we rose and we sang. And maybe, right, if you think about it, I mean, suggested answer in the mark scheme, and the mark scheme is available, right? As a teacher, I use it myself as well, obviously. right? And the reason being that once I think of what it could be, I go and check the same thing the same way a student does, right? You do. And that's the reason for that is because right to get an idea of what exactly is the examiner expecting, right? Because these linguistic skills are very open-ended, right? And if it were just like a debate or an opinion or something that you're discussing, that would be a very different scenario. But over here, since it's an exam, uh, so right, what the examiner is expecting is what matters. Although to be fair, right, they do mention that if you've given a response that is not part of the suggested answers, but it does seem like a valid response to them, then they would consider it. Right, there's the possibility, it's not guaranteed, but there is the possibility. So, right, referring to the marking scheme, once an attempt has been made, right, if you got it right, very good. If you didn't, so it will help you like shape your approach, right? To fine tune your approach. Like, okay, fine, what kind of a response does the examiner expect for such a question? Now, right, for the one that I've highlighted, slow waves, rockers as we rose and we sang, it could, right, it is simply that, they were moving up and down in the water with the waves. And also, right, then you could make it a bit better by saying that there was rhythmic movements of the waves and they were moving, rhythmically with them. Okay. Right. Other possible example that could have been taken is a contended pod of swimmers. Now, again, there are a few things, right, to keep in mind and to focus on when you're trying to figure out what the answer is, what the explanation should be. So, one is context. Two are the words that have been used, because the question is how the writer uses language effectively. So language is the words that have been used, right? So what are the words used? And then, as I already mentioned, you take those words and you picture it, right? You make a picture in your mind, you make a scene in your mind, you try and put yourself over there and you say, okay, fine, what's going on? What am I feeling? What am I looking at? What's happening? Okay, and then you try, okay, fine, so this is what the writer is trying to tell me. Over here, a contented pod or swimmer. So contented means happy. Okay, so that's, so one explanation could be that they're feeling happy, right? And then pod is like it's metaphorically used, pod meaning like a group, right? So maybe they all feel like they're part of a group. Maybe right, they feel like as if they're like some marine or aquatic animal that moves in like groups of multiple members. So something like that. Right. Then one of the suggested answers is the sun still stretches arrows down deep under water. Okay. So this tells us that how penetrating the sun rays were, right? That it was sunny, yes, but the sun rays were able to light up uh, the water underneath the surface, right? So they were very penetrating. They were going deep. So this is what we could explain for that one. Umbrellas of clear jellyfish. This is another one that's suggested. So, right, because the context over here is that the sun, right? So catching umbrellas of clear jellyfish. What is catching them? The sun rays that are going, like penetrating the water, right? And so the sun rays are penetrating deep, and because of that, the swimmer, in this case Matt, was able to see the jellyfish, meaning that the jellyfish are coming out from a depth probably, and that they're clear, right? And they're like umbrellas. So they've got like this spherical shape, right? Or hemispherical and or dome shaped like an umbrella. right? That's how we would describe it. And right, they're clear, so maybe they're transparent, right? You could maybe see through them or something, right? Glowing hypnotically, right? And so this would like they're giving off some light, maybe, right? Either they have their own light or they're glowing in the sun's light. And hypnotically means it's like, maybe it's magical or it's out of this world or it's surreal, or just you could just maybe just say that it's beautiful, right? And so there are a few more given in the art scheme, right? Crisscrossing wakes of other swimmers. So, right? And then finally, I let my feet trail, basking in the warm, um, washing over me, and floated onto the glassy water. Wakes of other swimmers. What does wake mean? In this context, it means like the waves or the movement in water that was created by the other swimmers that were going ahead of them, right? So there's a phrase that's used in its wake, right? So maybe there's an event or maybe someone does something, and so the phrase is used in its wake. In its wake, meaning as a result of it, right? As a result of that. So wakes of other swimmers, meaning what's resulting in them. Right? So the movement of water, the waves, the splashes that are being caused by this. And so as you can see, like there how many? You've got one, two, right, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, and nine possible examples that could have been picked, and you only required to pick one, right? And the explanations that go with that. So again, one for the proper example, and you can just copy that as it is, and 2 marks for right explanation. So give 2 points explanation for whatever example you pick, right? And that's how you're going to get your 3 marks. All right. Now that's it for the comprehension, right? And that's it for the writer's meaning effect. So again, it all boils down to practice. Now, to get more out of writer's meaning effect, right? What the other resource that we have are the 0500 papers, right? That's the IGCSE English as a first language, right? Those papers and the reading paper that they have, paper one, right? They have a number of questions. They have questions, particularly question 2C and 2B of paper one of 0500. Right? Those are along similar lines uh, as the general theme of question two, right? And in particular 2E. So if you want more, and there's like a lot of analysis and all of that going in as well, so that might help you with your descriptive writing. Although, right, the caliber over there is advanced, right? 1123 comparatively is simpler. Anyway, so you can try 0500 questions 2C and 2D, right? And possibly like the whole of question 2, because there are questions where they're asking you to think of synonyms and what they mean, to be as well, right? So I'd say the whole of question 2 would be very useful in practicing and preparing for the question 2 of 1123. Okay, so that's the resource you can use. Now, moving on to the summary. Okay, so I'm not going to immediately start off attempting it. I've reached question 3 and I just read the question, right? So, right, or in fact, the proper way to do it, once I'm done with the comprehension as a whole, right, I read section B, I'm not even reading the question. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the insert and I'm going to move to text B. And I'm just going to read text B start to end, right? So it's just this one page and right, it's volunteering to work with animals. Okay. In this online article, a conservation expert gives his opinions on animal sanctuaries, places that take care of animals, and volunteering to work in them. Right? So go ahead. We've got like 2 minutes of this meeting left. After which, right, there'll be like a 10-minute cool down, and then I'll start the new meeting, the next session, and I'll put in a message on WhatsApp that you can rejoin. Uh, Continue from here. So we've got 2 minutes. You can start reading, okay, and tell me when you want me to scroll. So first read through all of this, and then we can start working on the summary.